Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are following this series, I'm covering everything around GenAI and RAG from scratch in this series. And if you have seen my previous video, I have covered vector database and vector embeddings in my previous videos, which is part of the second module where I'm going to cover RAG from scratch, everything from scratch. So in the previous video, we covered vector embeddings and vector databases and everything around it. So today we'll build a RAG pipeline without using any frameworks like LangChain or LlamaIndex. We'll not use those frameworks, and we'll build a RAG pipeline. So if you have not seen my previous video, I will suggest you to go and watch that first. But you can still continue it if you know the basics of a RAG pipeline. So if you know what happens in a RAG pipeline is we have some data, we convert that into embeddings, and then we store that embedding into a vector database, right? We saw all these things in the previous session. And then we saw in the introduction video that what happens after storing everything in embedding is whenever user does a query, we pass everything to LLM, like we pass the prompt, the query, and the relevant data from this index. We don't pass the whole context that we have given to the LLM. We pass the relevant data only to the LLM, right? And this is what happens in a RAG pipeline. And we'll do all these steps without using any framework in today's session. So most of you had questions around this, like how to do this, then how to do this, then how is this relevant data passed? So everything will be crystal clear after this session. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so this is the code editor. Okay, this is my notebook where we'll write all the code. If you want to see this code, you can find all this on my GitHub. I have posted all this code to my GitHub, right? And so we'll start with here. First thing we need to do is we need to install the OpenAI ChromaDB and TikTok library, okay, which is done. Now, the next step is I will load the OpenAI API key from the environment variables and do all the imports required. Like I have imported OpenAI and ChromaDB. OpenAI, we all know that because we have to pass all the data to LLM, we'll use OpenAI for that. Because we have to store the embeddings into a vector database, so we are using ChromaDB. So ChromaDB is nothing but a vector database where we'll store our vectors. Okay. So this is also done. We have loaded the API key, which is there in my env file. And now the next step is we need some content. I told you in the previous session that the first thing of RAG is you have some content or some document on which you want to do some query. So I have some document, okay, and where I have which is about Virat Kohli. I have a lot of sentences here, a lot of data here, and I want to build a RAG pipeline on this content where I will do a query and I want LLM to answer around it. Okay, so I'll use this content. I'll load it. Okay. Now the next step in RAG is to chunk the content into smaller pieces. So since this is a large document, let's say this is a large document of 100 pages. So I'll break it down into single pages, like one page into 100. Like in this case, this is like around 40 sentences, let's say. So what we are doing is without using any framework, we are just breaking it every sentence into one chunk. Okay. So if I'll do this, you can see that the whole document that I had is now broken down into smaller chunks. Where Virat Kohli is one of the most, he was born on this, Kohli rose this, and so on, right? The next step is to convert them into embeddings, right? So if you look at this, we wrote this code in the previous session where we are using an OpenAI embedding model to convert any text into embedding. So what we'll do, we'll convert each of these chunks into embeddings and then store them into a vector DB. That's it. Okay. So this is the code to convert it to embedding. And then here we are just initializing our ChromaDB. ChromaDB is nothing but a very popular vector DB that creates the database in your local only. You just need to define a directory where you need to store the database. And then you just need to define a name for the collection. Like in this case, I have named my collection as Kohli V2, right? And then I'm just passing an ID, which is anything, random chunk /457, anything. And then documents is the like one chunk is one document. And then embedding, I'm using that get embedding method to get embedding of each of these chunks. So once everything is stored in the embedding, what you need to do is now we need to query the vector DB. So what we are doing here is we are querying the vector DB to find out the relevant context from the document that we have, from the large document that we have. So let's say if the first query is who is the life partner of Virat Kohli, and I want to find the top 3 relevant data related to this query from my DB. This is not using AI anymore. It is just querying the DB to find out the relevant data. We are still able to find the relevant answer, right? Similarly, if I run it on query 2, we are still able to find that, okay, which historic test series did India win under Kohli's captaincy? He led India to historic test series in this. Kohli succeeded in this. Kohli stepped down. These are the 3 most relevant contexts for this query. We are able to find that without using any LLM, without using any AI, by just storing them into vector and then finding the closest vector. That's it. I explained everything in detail in the previous session. So this is how we'll do that using a code. And now that we know that how to fetch relevant data from a vector DB for a specific query, like we had a query, we got our relevant data. Now the goal is simple, right? We just need to pass the context and the query to OpenAI. That's it, right? So we'll just pass the context and the query to OpenAI API and see what happens. So I have kept the system prompt very simple, that you are a helpful AI assistant. Answer based on the given context only. You don't have to make your answer, because OpenAI also knows about Virat Kohli, so it will try to generate answer from its own, right? Which we don't want right now. We want it to answer from our data only that we had initially. Okay, so I have answered this. Do not answer if the answer is not in context. I've kept it very simple. And then we are just calling OpenAI API like we have seen in the first module, where in the instruction I have passed the system prompt, and in input I have passed this is the context and this is the question, right? And I have set the temperature to very low so that it doesn't tries to use its own creativity, right? And I have also limited max token, which I'll not do here, okay? Right? And then we'll see what is the answer that we are getting from OpenAI. So what we are doing right now, our query is this one: which historic test series did India won? Okay. And our context are these 3 lines. Okay. We are just passing all that. Let's see. So India won the history. So yeah, now we had 3 relevant data. It was able to figure out a good answer out of it. India won the historic test series in Australia in 2018-19 under Kohli's captaincy, which was part of this, right? Okay. And then we can also do this query 1, and who is the life partner of Kohli, right? See what will happen. If you look at the relevant context, the relevant context is not saying Kohli is life partner is this person or so on, right? Here the sentence is different. Still, we saw in the previous session, because we are storing everything in vector embeddings, it is able to understand that life partner and married are almost similar things, right? So that's why it is able to figure out life partner and married are similar things. So the topmost relevant context is Kohli is married to this person. Okay, by looking at this also we can get the answer, but still we keep AI so that it reads everything in the context and tries to bring one answer in front of us. So it was able to answer this, right? Great. Now you will say that the context was so small, right? It is just 30 to 40 sentences. Why can't I just pass everything to OpenAI and get the answer out of it? So there is one thing that you need to know. If you pass everything to OpenAI, you're going to get charged for it. Okay. And the cost will also depend on that. But if you use RAG for that, you will not be charged for the whole document, because the whole document is getting converted into embedding and you are just querying on a specific section of that, which is the relevant section, right? So that's why we tend to use RAG pipeline. Even if the document is smaller and can fit in the context window, it is preferred to use RAG pipeline, because we are just passing the relevant context. Then AI will have only relevant context, so it will give you better answer, right? Okay. Thank you, everyone. I think that was all for this session, where we learned everything around how to build a RAG pipeline without using any framework. In the next session, we'll see how the steps that we have done in the session, how we can do the same using a framework like LangChain, right? And we'll also see how we can load different types of document together into a LangChain pipeline and then do a query on top of it. So we'll do all those interesting things in the next session, and then in the next module, we'll start AI agents as well. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and uh, keep on watching this video. I hope all of these are very helpful. So if you find this video helpful, then feel free to share this video in your college group with your college friends or anyone who is learning Gen AI and RAG. Uh, Thank you, everyone. Bye.